The topic of evolution is perhaps the most controversial aspect of the theory of evolution, simply because it gets to the heart of why most cynics dismiss Darwinism. The very premise defies what religion dictates as fact, that humans were the apple of a god's eye, and we are somehow special, separated from the rest of life on Earth. Indeed, it can be very easy to fall into this misguided way of thinking. Humans have definitely taken a developmental pathway completely different from other animals in most respects. However, as we improve our knowledge of the world around us, the evidence begins to become undeniable, and science can start to explain happenings and poke holes in the fables of our ancestors. Before we jump into all the fossil evidence, it should be noted that even with no fossil record to bolster the argument of common descent in regards to man, recent advances in genetic research have made it glaringly obvious that we share common ancestry with other primates. Our species diverged from our most common nascent family members, the chimps and the bonobos, approximately 7 million years ago, according to DNA evidence. To go even further, even if we didn't have DNA or fossils, the mere anatomical similarities between us and primates are undeniable. This was also obvious to Darwin, who briefly referenced it in The Origin of Species, and then later published his book very clearly stating this radical new proposal in The Descent of Man, without any fossil evidence to back it up at the time. But, for some reason, seeing the skull of an Australopithecus staring back at you seems to convince most skeptics. When Lucy was discovered by Donald Johanson in 1974, it set off a frenzy of other biologists to come across a host of other hominin fossil remains, and thus the story of us begins to manifest itself. Despite anatomical similarities, compared to our common ancestor, we have changed and diverged more away from the rest of the clade than any of the other modern apes. This can be highlighted by our lack of hair, dramatic increase of the brain case area, and the size and spatial arrangement of our teeth. As more fossils were turned up, instead of a logical flow of slowly changing features that would be easy to diagnose, biologists turned up starkly different hominin body structures. It also became apparent that multiple hominin species were alive and potentially interacting with one another during these time frames. Ultimately, this led to more of a tangled bush than a decisive tree of fossil evidence. It's not obvious which of these could have been a part of our past and which were evolutionary dead ends. However, the general trend of all of the fossils are going from less ape-like features to more human-like ones. The big focus that a lot of scientists were looking for was this missing link species between humans and apes. In 2002, the discovery of an older hominin from Central Africa was discovered. The skull was the only recovered piece, which is shown in the upper left-hand picture. But the creature's posture pointed towards bipedality due to the location and angle of the foramen magnum where the spinal cord inserts. In addition to this hominin also had a much flatter face, smaller teeth than apes, and also had begun to form brow ridges. This hominin lived 6 to 7 million years ago, approximately around when DNA evidence suggests we parted ways with our primate cousins. More Australopithecus fossils were discovered, including Lucy, and due to hip morphology, was confirmed that this genus was indeed bipedal. Both of these showed a distinct trend of changes toward becoming more human-like, and it is likely we shared a common ancestor. So when did the genus Homo finally come onto the scene? Well, the naming game is a little confusing and is still being argued today. Some of the more modern species of Australopithecus are placed into the genus Homo. Homo habilis was also discovered and is dated at approximately 2.5 million years ago. This hominin was the first confirmed tool user. Fossils discovered buried with axes and other weapons. A handful of other species were discovered as well, including Neanderthals in northern Europe. These were a truly exciting find, as DNA evidence suggests that early Homo sapiens interbred with this species, and evidence of ceremonial burials were found as well. With each new fossil discovered, the face of Homo sapiens was beginning to have shape, literally, and personality. The one odd factor that everyone seemed to realize was that all other species of Homo, except for us, completely disappeared 300,000 years ago. Where did everyone go? There are many theories, but the one that is backed up by DNA evidence is the out of Africa theory. Basically, Homo sapiens flourished and outcompeted every other member of the genus until they went extinct, and we've been dominant ever since. If that was the case, what propelled Homo sapiens to become so fit for its environment? What natural selection pressures were acting on hominins that made Homo sapiens so successful? What caused such a stark differentiation between us and apes? It is impossible to reconstruct the past environment, but scientists have a few good theories. By far the most profound change in the environment was the drought in Africa. This is what scientists believe spurred the mass dispersal of Homo sapiens to all corners of the earth. This also explains bipedality. Walking on two legs allowed humans to walk from forest to forest more efficiently, or maybe there were other selective advantages as well. Increased brain size could be positively selected for, since the larger brain allowed for the development of language, which could lead to planning, communication, and eventually the beginnings of societies, which would cause an overall increase of fitness.
Alan Wilson and Mary Claire King set out to find what differentiated us from apes. They looked at the differences between human protein sequences compared to chimps. They discovered our protein sequences only varied by about 1%. Alan and Mary concluded that humanist gene was created only by a few key mutations. In more recent years, they have discovered the difference in protein sequences to be closer to 1.5%. Since the sequencing of both chimp and human genomes, it has been found that there are genes in humans that are not even present in chimpanzees. We also differ in the amount of copies humans make of genes, which tend to be more than the average chimp. Genes are also expressed at different stages of development. On a larger scale, it is also noticeable that humans and chimps behave differently with language and pair bonding. It shows that our brains are configured differently. Scientists argue that there is no base for race. Race is merely a socio-political construct. Many biologists, on the other hand, believe race gives subspecies, which are simply populations of a species that are both geographically separated and differ genetically. This shows humans have had enough time geographically separated for genetic divergence to occur. Only about 10 to 15% variance occurs between different races. Yet 85 to 90% occurs among individuals within a particular race. Human species don't vary drastically in genes they carry. They differ in the frequency of expression of individual genes. Many differences are shown to occur by the pressure of the geographical environment, such as sickle cell anemia is higher in blacks because of their origin in Africa and the high occurrence of malaria. The darker skin of tropical groups most likely provides protection from the sun. Cultural change among geographically isolated individuals can lead to greater differences within humans, different languages, religions, and fashions. This can lead to genetic change because of sexual selection among the sought-out appearance of another within your race. Babies produce the enzyme lactase to break down lactose as they are weaning. Eventually, they stop the production of lactase when the consumption of milk stops. Yet, it has been found that in cultures that raise cows for meat or milk retain the production of lactase because of the continued consumption of it. Tolerance to lactose allows these individuals to become more fit from an additional source of nutrients. Sweets, on the other hand, once a rare source of energy for our ancestors, has become a source of obesity and tooth decay in more modern times. Not using the resources as once seemed fit for our ancestors has the current human population overeating, possibly causing humans to devolve. But we could move forward to evolve to the new modern environments where food is more plentiful and accessible.
The Beast Within. In a book by evolutionist Richard Dawkins called The Selfish Gene, it was assumed that evolution makes us behave selfishly, caring only for ourselves. However, the selfish gene is a metaphor for how natural selection works. Genes act selfish. The genes that are better adapted push the other genes away, and the selfish genes dominate. Are humans hardwired? Evolutionary psychology tries to explain modern human behaviors as adaptive results of natural selection acting on our ancestors. Human societies share a number of widely recognized human universals, such as the division of labor between sexes, male dominance, religion or supernatural belief, mourning for the dead, favoring relatives over non-relatives, decorative art and fashion, dance and music, gossip, body ornament, and the love of sweets. Most of these behaviors distinguish humans from other animals. A problem is that it might be too easy to make up evolutionary reason why many modern humans should have been adapted. Rape is a way for men who can't find mates to father offspring. Homosexuality. This behavior seems like it is the opposite of what natural selection would give. Genes for gay behavior which don't get passed on would seem like they would disappear quickly. There must be some behaviors that have evolutionary bias, except these behaviors are almost certainly adaptations. These behaviors would include eating, sleeping, sex drive, parental care, and favoring relatives. Evolved behaviors. Sexual behavior is the most obvious. In parallel with many animals, human males are largely promiscuous, while females are rather choosy. Males are larger and stronger than females and have higher levels of testosterone. In areas with higher levels of reproductive success, males have shown more reproductive success than females. It has been shown in studies that men search for younger women with childbearing bodies, while women prefer slightly older men who have wealth, status, and willingness to invest in a relationship. Behavior in our surroundings. In our society, women wear makeup and wear fancy clothes to try to attract men, but in nature, it is the males that have the brighter colors and bigger feathers to impress the females. Genes aren't destiny. All kinds of environmental factors can affect the expression of genes. A few examples are juvenile diabetes and eyesight. Juvenile diabetes is a genetic disease, but harmful effects can be eliminated by small doses of insulin, which is an environmental intervention. Also, poor eyesight, which can run in your family, and a fix for this would be glasses, which is another environmental intervention.